In this video, I'll show you how to make this fall flower. We're going to keep with the same color scheme as we started out with our jack-o'-lantern, and we'll follow that through with all of our fall clip art. I have the Essentials workspace activated, but I have added a couple of things. I've added the Brushes panel, the Appearance panel, and the Swatches panel. I also have the grid turned on. I can toggle that on and off using the keyboard shortcut Command apostrophe. That turns it off, and then pressing it again turns it back on. Or with nothing selected on my artboard, I can come over to the Properties panel. I can click on this center little icon in the Ruler and Grids section and turn it off and turn it back on. In addition to that, I'd like for Snap to Grid to be turned on, and so I'm going to come to the Snap options and click on this center icon, and that will turn it on. I can also toggle it on and off using the keyboard shortcut Shift Command apostrophe, but I'm going to leave it on for now. All right, the first thing that we'll do is we're going to make a pattern brush for the flower petals, and I'll use the rectangle tool, keyboard shortcut M, and I'm going to click one time on my artboard, and that brings up the rectangle dialog box. I'm going to type in 1 inch for the width, and then I'll press the tab key and I'll type in 2 inches for the height, and then I'll press enter or return, and that gives me my rectangle. I'll come over to the Appearance panel and give it the colors CMYK 0, 80, 95, 0, and I'll give it a black stroke and a 2-point weight. Now I'll get the direct selection tool, keyboard shortcut A. I'm going to click on the top right anchor, hold my shift key down and click on the left anchor, and then drag the handles to the center to round the corners. Now I'm going to go up to Object, Path, and click on Offset Path to do the little center part of the flower petal. And I already have this setting in here. It is offset minus 0.1 inches. It's set to miter, and the meter limit is 4, and I'll say OK. Now while it's selected, I'll come to the Appearance panel and I'll change the color to 0, 35, 85, 0. And I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I'm going to select both of these objects, and I'll group them using the keyboard shortcut Command G. Now I'll move those out of the way just a little bit, and I'm ready to make the bounding box for my flower petal. And I use an invisible rectangle for that. I'll get the rectangle tool, keyboard shortcut M, and I'll click one time on the artboard. And my bounding box is going to be the same size as my flower petals, so I can leave the settings here and just press OK. But the bounding box needs to be invisible, so I'll come to the Appearance panel and I'll remove the fill and I'll remove the stroke. Now I'm going to get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I'll select both the petal and the bounding box, and I am going to come over to Align. Now I do have Align to Selection checked, and so that's going to align these two objects that I have selected. And I'll click on Horizontal Align Center and then Vertical Align Center. Now my bounding box is right in line with the design, but it is in front of the design. I'll come to the Layers panel and show you. Illustrator places each new object on top of the one before, and it needs to be underneath it, it needs to be behind it. So I can either select Rectangle and move it beneath the group, or let me undo that, keyboard shortcut Command Z. I can use the keyboard shortcut Shift Command left bracket. Now it's where it needs to be and it's invisible, so I'm going to select both of these and I'll group them using the keyboard shortcut Command G. Now I'm ready to open the Brushes panel, and I'm going to drag and drop my flower petal into the Brushes panel. I'll select Pattern Brush and say OK, and I'm going to name this Orange Flower Petal and say OK. Now we'll move this up and out of the way, and I'm going to get the Ellipse tool, keyboard shortcut L, and I'll click one time on the artboard, I'm going to make a 2-inch circle. So I'll type in 2 for the width, press my tab key, type in 2 for the height, and then press my enter or return key, and that gives me a 2-inch circle. I'll come over to the brushes panel and I'm going to click on the orange flower petal that we just made. And we have the beginning of our flower. Now I'll come to the properties panel and I am going to reduce the stroke to 0.75, and then I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I'm going to move the flower up out of the way for the moment. Now to get the dotted pattern that I have in the center of the flower, I will need to make a swatch. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'll use the Ellipse tool, keyboard shortcut L, and I'll click on my artboard, and I'm going to make a 1/4 of an inch circle. So I'll type in 0.25, tab down to height, 0.25, and then press return. And I'll give this a fill color of the 03585 and I'm going to remove the stroke. Then I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I'm going to place the center of this little circle at the intersection of 2 of these heavier grid lines. Now I'll hold down my Option key and I'm going to drag to the right, and I'll move to the center of this line and release my mouse, and then I'll duplicate that move by pressing the keyboard shortcut Command D. Now select all 3 of these circles, and I'm going to hold down my Option key and I'm going to come down to the center of this 1-inch square, and then I'll duplicate that move using the keyboard shortcut again, Command D. Now I'll create a bounding box for my swatch. I'll use an invisible rectangle just like I did for my pattern brush. I'll get the rectangle tool, keyboard shortcut M, click on the artboard. That opens up the rectangle dialog box. It already says 1 inch for the width, so I'll tab down to height, type in 1, and then press the return key or enter. And I'm going to have to remove the fill color to make it invisible. There is no stroke. And I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V. This time I'm just going to drag my bounding box and place it right over the center of this little 1-inch square, and then I'll select both the bounding box and my 9 circles, and I'm going to get the shape builder tool. It's on the left toolbar, and it's 1 little circle and then a larger circle and the little black arrow key. It's also keyboard shortcut Shift M, and once it is activated, I'm going to hold down my Option key and just mouse over all of the little areas that are outside of my bounding box, and that will remove those. And then I'll get my selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and select the remaining objects in the bounding box and group them together using the keyboard shortcut Command G. Now I'll open up the swatches panel, and I'm going to drag my swatch right into the swatches panel and release my mouse. And we'll just move this little guy up out of the area, and let me show you what happens now with a swatch. I'm going to get the Ellipse tool, keyboard shortcut L, and I'm just going to drag out a big circle, and I'm going to press on that swatch. And you can see that it is a seamless repeat, and I can now place this on top of the center of my flower. And when I want to resize it, I press the keyboard shortcut S for size, and then when I am reducing a swatch, I have to hold down the tilde key. And the tilde key is with the accent key just to the left of number 1 on your keyboard. So I'm going to press down on my mouse, and I'm going to start dragging, and then I'll press the tilde key. And as I start dragging, then I'm going to press down the Shift key. So when I resize, it resizes everything equally, both horizontally and vertically. And then I'm going to release my mouse, and you can see that I can make any size I want to make. All right, I'm going to go back and get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and for now I'm going to delete this. Now for the flower, I'm going to make the first layer of the center, and I'll use the Ellipse Tool, keyboard shortcut L, click on the artboard, I'll type in 1.75, tab 1.75, and then hit return. I'm going to make the fill black, and then I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I'm going to just drag it over on top of our flower. Now I'm going to make another circle this same size, so I'll use Command C to copy this and Command F to place it in front of the first one. And so this second one, we're going to press our new pattern swatch that we just made, and that places really big dots on here. So let's resize those. We use the keyboard shortcut S for size, and then I'm going to start dragging, then I hold down the tilde key, and as I drag, then I press the shift key, and then I release my mouse, and I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I think that's going to be just fine. Now I'm going to make a third circle. So I'll click on this second layer, and I'm going to copy it, Command C, and then I'm going to paste it in front of the first two circles, Command F. Now I'll go over to the Properties panel, and I'm going to remove the fill, and I'm going to change the stroke to our orange. That's the 0, 80, 95, 0, and I'm going to increase the size of it. Let's go to 5 points right now, and then I'm going to open the Appearance panel, and it's showing me that my object has no fill and it has a 5-point stroke, but I want to add an additional stroke, so I'll come to the bottom of the Appearance panel and click on the stroke icon, and it adds another stroke, and it always adds it to the top. Well, I'm going to actually edit the first stroke, and so I'm going to change the color here. I'll change that to black, and then I'm going to increase the size. Let's go to 9, and what that's going to do is in effect give us 2 points on either side of our orange stroke. So we have our flower, and I'm going to group all of these together using the keyboard shortcut Command G. Now we're going to make our leaf, and I'll use the Ellipse tool for that, keyboard shortcut L, and I'll click on the artboard, and I'm going to make a 1-inch width and tab and make a 2.5-inch length and hit the return key. And I need to come back to the Properties panel. We just want for this to be a 2-point stroke, and we're going to use this dark green for a fill. I'm going to come over to the left toolbar, and you may have your pen tool showing, but if you press on the pen tool, there's going to be a little pull-out menu, and at the bottom of that is the anchor point tool. It's keyboard shortcut Shift C. It's a little open arrow here, and I'm going to click on the top anchor and the bottom anchor. Then I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, and I'm going to duplicate it. So I'll hold down the Shift and the Option keys, and that allows me to make an exact copy, and I'm going to keep it right in that same vertical line as the first one and release my mouse. And then I'll get the line segment tool, keyboard shortcut \, and we'll start at the anchor point and hold down the Shift key and draw down to the bottom anchor, and it's a 2-point stroke, which is what I want. I'll get the selection tool, keyboard shortcut V, select both of my leaves and my stroke and group them using the keyboard shortcut Command G. Now let's get these all married together. I'm going to select everything, and I'll click on horizontal align center and vertical align center. I'll click on my leaves, and I'm going to move them to the back. I'll use the keyboard shortcut Shift Command left bracket. And now they're still selected, so I'm going to rotate them. I'll use the keyboard shortcut R, and that puts the rotate ball right in the center of them, which is what I want. And so I'm just going to rotate until I have them where I like them, and I'll use the keyboard shortcut V and deselect, and then select them all one more time and group them using the keyboard shortcut Command G. Well, we have our fall flower, and in the next video, I'm going to show you how to make candy corn, and that'll be a really fast video. We're going to just move and groove through this so that we can get to our repeating seamless pattern. And if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so that you don't miss any of these episodes, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye now.